Hey guys, it's Chris, so let's talk about Westworld. I hope you watched Westworld Sunday night. I did. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I have a few problems with it, but overall I think this is going to be a great story. And speaking of Westworld, I need a little intro for that, don't I? I mean, I call you guys Ice and Fire Nerds for Game of Thrones, Deadheads for Walking Dead, I don't know, host and guest, or virtual cowboys? I don't know, we'll figure that out. But anyway, let's jump right in and talk about Westworld Season 1, Episode 1, the original. Alright, so first impressions. I think this has very, very good potential. I'm not extremely satisfied with it. I don't think it was as good as I thought it was going to be. But of course, this is the first episode, and they threw a lot of information at us. Almost too much for that matter. I think it would have been a little better if they would have withheld just a little bit, because I think they tried to establish a little too much as far as what was going on, instead of just kind of introducing us to the world, introducing us to the characters, and also a lot of foreshadowing as to what's going to go down. Now, that's not necessarily a negative critique. I'm just kind of giving you my thoughts on it initially. After I watch it again, I may feel differently, but the point being that there was a lot of information. We got the majority of the main characters we're going to meet. We got Dr. Robert Ford, who is played by Sir Anthony Hopkins, one of my favorite actors of all time.
Hello, Clarice.
I thought he did great. He is kind of the mastermind behind this park, Westworld. If you didn't see my Westworld preview video on what to expect in the first season, check that out. There'll be a link to that in the description below. Now, this is based off a 1978 Michael Crichton movie called Westworld, which is pretty obvious. Anyway, the point being that in the original movie, there was also a Roman world as well as a medieval world. I think it would be pretty cool to mention those at some point, but I don't think they'll mention those at all, and we'll likely never see anything like that in our story. But that would be pretty cool to see a Game of Thrones style world with androids, would it not? Tell me. Tell me it wouldn't be. Tell me that's not the next damn thing that happened after Westworld goes off the air, right? Tell me. Or is Game of Thrones really medieval world? Yeah. Theory crafting. It's right there. I just solved it. We don't need to watch the show. Anyway, I digress. We got introduced to a lot of characters, so let's go through the basics of how this place works first, and then we'll kind of break it down from there. So Westworld is a theme park, basically based off the Old West, just like Jurassic Park. Again, this is a work of Michael Crichton, and it's going to deal with, how people perceive God and how people play God as far as our evolution, what we create, is our technology starting to outweigh our humanity. That's basically the storyline here. This is kind of told in a new way. Well, I guess this is kind of an old way since this was originally written in 1970 something. So anyway, the point being, a new spin on an old way. So we have three sets of people in our story basically, and that is the people who run the park. That is, Dr. Robert Ford, the mastermind behind everything, the head programmer, the head of security, the head of story writing, all these people who run the park. And by the way, they do run this thing from a giant facility on top of a giant ass mountain, wherever the actual physical park is located. And then we have, of course, our hosts, which are the androids who work in the park, and they don't know they're androids. They think they're really living in this world and experiencing every day, and what they do is work in what's called cycles, or basically days. They basically follow a narrative or a basic storyline every single day, but it can have some slight changes depending on what happens with the guests, interaction with other hosts, etc. So they can deviate from their storylines a little bit, but basically they stay with the same loop, and at the end of the day, at some point, everything resets and everything starts over again just like it was. And of course, the third set of people are the guests, and that's the people who pay to go experience this Wild West adventure. And I believe, if I remember correctly, they're paying $40,000 a day, and I believe that's from the old movie. They didn't really state that in the show that I'm aware of, but they're paying a lot of damn money to go experience the Old West, and when they get there, they can do what the hell they want. They can be a villain, they can go to brothels, they can kill people. That's what they want to experience. They want to pay for that, so they have the ability to do that without hurting people right now. So then we were told that Sir Anthony Hopkins, Dr. Ford, has upgraded the hosts and given them access to basically old routines, old subroutines, old programming, basically memories to them, and it's starting to cause a problem. So we're starting to see some of the hosts malfunction. We have a main character, Teddy, who's basically just a gunslinger love interest of Dolores, the main character, and he comes in every day on a train. In the beginning of the show, I thought he was an actual guest because he did come in on the train, so he seems to be the only host that comes in on the train who shows up to this town with the newcomers, and that's what the guests are called, the newcomers. That's at least what the hosts refer to them as. So he comes in with them, he ends up meeting up with Dolores somehow, but again, sometimes that story's changed a little bit and he doesn't meet back up with her depending on how the guests interact with him. And of course, this is going to be the beginning of the cyborg apocalypse. The writing is all over the wall. We had several references to, kids eventually rebelling. They're making it pretty obvious what's going to happen, but I'm really interested to see how they're going to pull this off, even with the big budget that they have. But I think there's enough information here, there's enough story, there's enough characters and plot lines that we can start to kind of theory craft some things. But anyway, what seems to really kick this thing off is Dolores' father, and I believe his name is Peter. He finds a photograph when he's herding some cattle, because he's basically just a rancher, but he finds this picture, and it is a picture of a woman in New York City in Times Square, I believe. So apparently a guest came in at some point, dropped an actual picture from the real world on the ground, and it kind of got buried there. He dug it up, and this of course caused the butterfly effect and started to affect his programming. He starts to freak out and basically lose his shit, and starts to question the nature of his reality and where he really is, and more importantly, what the hell he actually is. So in a nutshell, there was about 200 androids or hosts basically that was upgraded with this programming, and they are basically recalled. So the main story writer, I believe his name is Lee, he wrote a little story so it wouldn't disrupt the main storylines or disrupt guest satisfaction, to where basically every one of these hosts that had the bad programming got shot so they could pull them out of there and run diagnostics. Now, one thing I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of, and I'm sure we will, is how the hell they go in there and grab all these androids and bring them back to the facility. We didn't see really an entry or an exit point as far as the security team and programmers. They actually did go into the park dressed up in Old West clothing after the storyline was completed, and they did pull them out of there physically so they can go in and chat with them in the main facility. So I don't know about you, but I was wondering the whole damn time, when they bring these people in for questioning or for diagnostics, why the hell they gotta sit there and talk to them butt ass naked? Now, the real interesting character for me at least was Ed Harris's character called the Man in Black. Now, I'm unsure about what he actually is. He seems to be a real person, a guest that says he's been there for 30 years, and that happens to be how long the park has been open. Now, apparently the programmers or the people that run this place are not aware of him, because he comes up every single day. He visits Dolores every single day, but she never remembers who he is, of course, because she gets reset. Teddy tries to shoot him several times and it doesn't affect him. So the question there is if Teddy knew he was a guest, he would never attempt to shoot him, but he did in fact attempt to shoot him several times, and it basically had no effect on him whatsoever. So it's still really not clear whether he can be hurt as far as being an android, or if he's an actual human guest that's been there for 30 years and kind of got lost in the system. But he's on some kind of investigation of his own, because he actually takes a guy from a casino and takes him out, and he's playing this so-called bigger game. He realizes all these androids are what they are. Whether he's one himself, we don't know, but he does scout this guy, takes the top of his head off, and there's some kind of map or circuitry kind of design printed on the inside of his scalp, and I think we'll see that again later for sure as far as the previews go. But the point being that he is a very mysterious character. It's hard to tell exactly who he is and what he wants. He's definitely trying to figure out what's going on in this world, and that's kind of the confusing part for me, because if he was a guest, he would know exactly what was going on. He had just been there 30 years, he knows everybody's an android, and perhaps he just figured out a way to kind of get lost and never come out as far as being there the entire 30 years the park has been open. But again, if he's human, he would already know that this was a park and these were androids, and he wouldn't have any questions about what the hell is going on. So perhaps he's a person who somehow got caught up in this park that didn't know it was a park. Or perhaps he is an android of some type because the bullets didn't hurt him, and Teddy actually tried to shoot him when Teddy's basic core programming says you cannot attempt to hurt a real person. So I think that's very interesting as far as his character goes, and I look forward to see where they go with him. So anyway, guys, I'll keep this a little bit short. So kind of to wrap everything up here, basically you have a pretty damn cool story based off an original 1978 film about a virtual reality matrix, about man playing God, technology outgrowing mankind, overcoming our humanity, so to speak. And I think this is a very cool package to put it in. I love old Western style stuff, just like I love medieval stuff like Game of Thrones. I think this is a very cool way to do it. Matrix style, except you have actual androids. Of course they're going to revolt. I mean, there was foreshadowing all throughout the thing. We knew this was going to happen, obviously, before the show came on. So I think overall this is a pretty damn good show and has a lot of potential. Now, do I think it's going to be the next Game of Thrones? No, I don't think it's going to be the next Game of Thrones. I don't think it's that kind of show. However, I do think this will be a hugely successful show. I just don't think it's going to quite reach that Game of Thrones level. So again, based off my first impressions, I would say I love the acting. I think the characters are great. I'm already kind of into some of the characters. The Man in Black, Ed Harris's character, is going to be very interesting to me. The programmer's got something going on too. The security guy asked him, "You don't have kids at home, do you?" And he said no, but then later on we saw him looking at a picture of a little boy. Now I'm assuming if a lot of people had to guess right now who was causing this problem as far as this code update, it would be Dr. Ford. But I'm not so sure, because we hear the programmer as the show opens talking to Dolores apparently, asking the same type of questions that the security guy did whenever there was a problem found. But he also kind of went in a little bit deeper and said, what if I told you that everything you know is wrong? What if I told you your very existence was planned to meet the needs of paying customers? And I think he may have something to do with this whole thing in the background, kind of the secret agent man, so to speak, as far as wanting this thing to implode or maybe take it to the next level and create artificial intelligence. So it's certainly hard to say right now, being only one episode, but I think there's more to the story than just, mad scientist Dr. Anthony Hopkins' character, Dr. Ford, just having some ulterior motive in creating artificial intelligence on purpose in order for them to become Skynet and take over the damn world. If I had a couple critiques, I would say again, we got introduced to a little too much of the technology side, I think, in the first episode. I think that could have waited a little bit as far as how they're made. We do see they're all made with 3D printers. They even make the damn horses, so nothing in that world is real. And I would like to see a little bit more from the guest perspective. We only saw a few scenes of guests actually interacting with things and going through storylines, and I'm sure we'll see more of that. And that's certainly not a major critique on my part. I'm just saying from my perspective, I just think we got thrown in a little too soon to all the technology side of things instead of the actual world itself. And before I close this out, I gotta mention one more thing, so you thought I was gonna forget. Dolores, of course, told the security guy earlier that she would not hurt a living thing, one of the questions they asked about their core programming. And at the very end, after they had replaced her father and seemingly fixed all the problems, she gets up in the morning as usual, walks out on the deck. She has a new father that's been replaced. She's sitting there going through her normal lines. A fly lands on her and she smacks it and kills it. So if that's not foreshadowing, I don't know what the hell foreshadowing is. So anyway, guys, I'll leave it there, short and sweet. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Did you watch Westworld? Do you like Westworld? What did you think of the premiere episode? Do you think it's going to be a big time show? Okay show, something to keep up with, or do you think this is something you could really get vested in, like a Game of Thrones style show? I think there is going to be enough storyline and enough character depth as far as theory crafting and things like that, especially with the Ed Harris character. So I think there is going to be some cool things we need to figure out of what's really going on. So I definitely do see some twists coming. This can't just be a show where we already know it's going to happen and we're just kind of all interested to see how that happens. So anyway, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. Also, remember, I have t-shirts available now, so please check the link in the description for the Teespring store that I have set up, and there will be more designs going up soon, so keep an eye out for that. Also, keep in mind, A Dragon Raised by Wolves Part 3 for Game of Thrones is coming out soon. I am in the process of editing that and another Game of Thrones video now, so I got a lot going on. And of course, The Walking Dead starts up in just a couple weeks, so we're getting back into TV season, and I'm going to be busy as hell. So once again, you guys, I hope you enjoyed Westworld. Let me know what you think. As usual, thank you for all the support. Be sure to subscribe to get everything. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Anyway, the point being that, people have to stop texting me when I'm filming.